Fox News alert now. Tough talk amid rising tensions with Iran as President Trump issues a strong warning to Tehran. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith.
And I'm John Scott. In for Bill Hemmer today, President Trump saying war would end badly for the Islamic Republic, tweeting, "If Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again." That tweet coming hours after a rocket attack near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. But
President Trump standing firm, telling our own Steve Hilton that he will do what is necessary to keep nuclear weapons out of Iran's hands.
I just don't want them to have nuclear weapons, and they can't be threatening us. I don't want to fight, but you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen.
Rich Edson kicking things off live at the White House for us this morning. Rich, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra. And the U.S. government says there have been no claims of responsibility yet for this attack and that the rocket landed away from any buildings with American personnel in them. A senior State Department official tells us, quote, "We have made clear over the past 2 weeks and again underscore that attacks on U.S. personnel and facilities will not be tolerated and will be responded to in a decisive manner. We will hold Iran responsible if any such attacks are conducted by its proxy militia forces or elements of such forces and will respond to Iran accordingly." A spokesman for U.S. Central Command says that Iraqi security forces are investigating this incident. Over the past month, the U.S. has expanded its military presence in the region. B-52 bombers, a carrier strike group, Patriot missiles, all citing an increased threat from Iran. This escalation began on the around 1-year anniversary of the U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, and the U.S. has restored significant sanctions against Iran.
I ended the Iran nuclear deal, and actually, I must tell you, I had no idea it was going to be as strong as it was. The country is devastated from the standpoint of the economy.
Senior administration official says the United States has reached out to Iran to talk with them, but that Iran has refused to respond. Iran has said publicly that it does not want to negotiate with the United States because the U.S. agreed to a nuclear deal and then withdrew from it. Sandra?
And Rich, it's 9 o'clock a.m. on the East Coast, and there's already been a lot of tweeting by the president this morning in a very short period of time. What is he saying?
All right. Busy morning on Twitter, about 6 tweets within less than a minute, much of it discussing this New York Times story from over the weekend. The Times claims that anti-laundering specialists at Deutsche Bank recommended that reporting transactions involving entities controlled by the president and Jared Kushner to federal authorities, and that Deutsche Bank executives decided not to do so. The president tweeted, quote, "The failing New York Times, it will pass away when I leave office in 6 years, and others of the fake news media keep writing phony stories about how I didn't use many banks because they didn't want to do business with me. Wrong. It is because I didn't need money. Very old." He also says that the people at Deutsche Bank were very professional and that if they didn't want to do business with him, he would have had options to go elsewhere. Sandra?
Rich Edson at the White House. Rich, thanks. Meanwhile, 2020 Democrats out in full force over the weekend, campaigning across the country yesterday and again later today, as well as hitting the Sunday morning talk shows. One of those contenders, Pete Buttigieg, took part in a Fox News town hall last night, weighing in on President Trump's tweets and his fellow Democratic candidates.
The tweets are, I don't care.
The fact is, it's a very effective way for him to reach tens of millions of Americans.
Well, there's a lot of us running for president on the Democratic side, but I think it's safe to say I'm not like the others.
Peter Ducey live from New Hampshire for us this morning near the site of that town hall last night. Hey, Peter.
Sandra, good morning. Mayor Pete told potential primary supporters last night he does not think potential attacks by President Trump on Twitter, who has nicknamed him Alfred E. Newman, run the risk of derailing his primary campaign.
And I get it. Look, it's mesmerizing. It's hard for anybody to look away. Me too. It is the nature of grotesque things that you can't look away.
On the issue of third-term abortion, Buttigieg was well received by the crowd in Claremont when he explained why he supports giving women the right to choose whether or not to have that procedure near the end of their pregnancies, because he believes there would always be difficult circumstances at that point.
We're talking about women who have perhaps chosen a name, women who have purchased a crib, families that then get the most devastating medical news of their lifetime, something about the health or the life of the mother that forces them to make an impossible unthinkable choice.
Buttigieg has 6% support right now among all Democratic primary voters, and even though very little of that comes from minority voters, the mayor said he thinks that's just because many minority voters haven't seen or heard much from him yet. The 37-year-old also expressed confidence that his youth can be a strength and not a liability.
You know, what the world is going to look like in the 2050s isn't just something I think about or write about or wonder about. It's hopefully going to be my life too. And that's why making sure we actually do something about climate change, making sure we actually have a fiscally sustainable path.
New Hampshire is clearly critical to the Buttigieg campaign strategy. He was just here last night for that televised town hall, and he's coming back next weekend for Memorial Day weekend. Sandra?
Peter Ducey, thank you.
Despite Buttigieg's quick rise in the polls, Joe Biden is the clear frontrunner among Democrats, and President Trump is going after him. This after Biden bashed the president on foreign policy and a few other issues while campaigning through the Pennsylvania battleground this weekend. That's where the president himself will be heading later today. First, here he is swinging back at Joe Biden.
He says China is not a competitor of ours. China is a massive competitor of ours. They want to take over the world. But with Biden, he says they're not a competitor. Then they take a lot of money from China.
Let's bring in Byron York, chief political correspondent at the Washington Examiner, also a Fox News contributor. Good morning, Byron.
Good morning, John.
So the president seems to be spending a lot of his tweet time focusing on Joe Biden these days. Why?
Well, the one thing the president looks at very, very carefully are the polls. And there's no doubt that Joe Biden has had a very good run in the polls since when Biden got in the race on April 25th, he had a 6 percentage point lead over Bernie Sanders. Now it's 20 points. So the president takes notice of things like that. And you have to remember the president himself, when he got into the Republican primary race in the summer of 2016, led virtually wire to wire. So he looks at Biden as somebody who might do something like that and potentially his strongest competitor.
Also true, though, that the polls said Donald Trump could never win the presidency, and he did, and he has been dismissive of the polls. You're saying that he actually pays more attention to them than he admits?
Oh, absolutely. Looking at Biden's standing, absolutely clear. Now, the president is going to do a campaign event tonight in Pennsylvania. He has done events recently in Michigan and Wisconsin, and the president basically owes his election as president to those victories in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. This is not an accident. And he sees Joe Biden. Now, this hasn't been tested with voters yet, but he sees Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate who might have the best appeal to people who otherwise would vote for Trump in those key states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin.
Well, let's take a look at a Quinnipiac poll of Democrats in Pennsylvania when asked, who they like among, as a presidential candidate. These are registered Democrats now. Joe Biden comes in at 39%. Bernie Sanders way back at 13%. Then you see the rest, Harris, Warren, and Buttigieg. So clearly in Pennsylvania, among Democrats, this is not a multi-party poll, Joe Biden is very strong there, Byron.
Yeah, and that's a very strong electability argument for Joe Biden, because he'll say the same thing. Look, Donald Trump won because he won Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And look at the polls. Who are Democrats more likely to unify behind? It would be Joe Biden. And remember, the theme of Biden's rollout address over the weekend in Philadelphia was that he could unify not only Democrats, but the whole country. He set himself apart sort of from fighting Democrats and said he wanted to bring people together. So those good poll numbers fit in with that theme.
He also claimed credit for the current state of the economy, saying that it's all because of the Obama-Biden White House that we're enjoying this current boom.
Well, not a surprise. We've seen that from Democrats for quite a while now. Certainly in the first year of a presidency, the prior president can say, well, he inherited this or he inherited that. But I think when you're in the third year of a presidency, the president can pretty much reasonably take credit for the economy. He'll take credit if it's good. If it turns bad, who knows? He might start blaming Obama and Biden.
All right, Byron York, Washington Examiner. Byron, thank you.
Thank you, John.
And more on this at the bottom of the hour when we speak with Trump 2020 campaign press secretary Kayleigh McEnany. She joins us about 20 minutes from now.
We'll certainly continue that conversation about the economy and Biden taking credit for the strong economy that we're seeing today as a result of the Obama administration policies. So more on that coming up. All right. Meanwhile, on to this Fox News alert. Dramatic and extreme new video coming in showing a storm chaser getting an up-close look as a tornado touches down in Colorado. Wow, some dramatic footage there. That is just one of 50 different tornadoes touching down across the plains. We're going to have more on the path of destruction as more severe weather is on its way. Plus, there is this.
It put a huge smile on my face, and it took a lot of darkness off my heart just knowing that this young girl is going to be okay.
Relief for the parents of a young girl kidnapped in Texas. The 8-year-old found safe and her abductor now behind bars. More on this. And a Republican lawmaker breaking ranks, becoming the first Republican congressman to say the president engaged in impeachable conduct. How his fellow Republicans and the president are responding this morning. Congressman Andy Biggs will join us next on that.
Maybe he wants some type of exit strategy, but it's very disturbing. This is exactly what you would expect from Justin. He never supported the president, and I think he's just looking for attention.
Fox News alert. Authorities in Alabama say they have captured the gunman who shot and killed a police officer last night. The police department at Auburn University announcing the arrest of Grady Wayne Wilkes. Police say the 29-year-old suspect wearing body armor opened fire on officers as they responded to a domestic disturbance call. One officer was killed. We do not know yet that officer's identity. 2 others seriously injured. They are expected, though, to recover. More on this arrest as we get it. Representative Justin Amash making the case for impeaching the president, the first Republican congressman to do so, tweeting, quote, "Here are my principal conclusions. 1, Attorney General Barr has deliberately misrepresented Mueller's report. 2, President Trump has engaged in impeachable conduct. 3, partisanship has eroded our system of checks and balances. 4, few members of Congress have read the report." The president hit back, calling Amash a, quote, "total lightweight and a loser," as fellow Republicans make it clear the congressman stands alone in his views.
This is exactly what he wants. He wants to have attention. He votes more with Nancy Pelosi than he ever votes with me. It's a question whether he's even in our Republican conference as a whole.
My own view is that Justin Amash has reached a different conclusion than I have.
Let's bring in Arizona Republican Congressman Andy Biggs, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Good morning to you, Congressman.
Good morning, Sandra.
Well, thanks for helping us start off a new week here. And you look back at some of those comments made by your fellow Republicans in response to Justin Amash. Where do you stand when you heard his thoughts?
Well, Justin's a friend, but Justin's wrong on this clearly. And the way he did this is all wrong as well. I mean, the reality is there was no collusion. There was no conspiracy. So that's check 1. Number 2, the obstruction charge. I mean, to have the obstruction, you really need the predicate crime or the underlying crime. Well, there was no underlying crime, so he wasn't obstructing. And I will just tell you, Sandra, when he says that few people have read this in Congress, I'm amazed at that, because everybody I know who's even talking about this publicly and in private to me about this, we have all read the report. We've compared notes. We've tried to interpret what we think are strong points or weak points. We've all read the report. So I was kind of floored by Justin's conclusions. I think I disagree with him wholeheartedly on this.
He's making the case that there was response so fast to the report within hours that there's no way some of those GOPers could have read the entire report and then formed their opinion. Did you read the report first and then decide?
Yeah, absolutely, Sandra. So I know exactly where I was. I was in Yuma with a group of congressmen down there at the border. We had the hotel. We had to go buy paper to get the hotel to allow us to print it out. Mm-hmm. We printed it out and began reading it immediately. I know Congressman Gates was with me. We started reading it immediately. We were comparing notes the whole time we were reading it as we were riding back from Yuma to Phoenix, which is a good 3-hour trip. And I will just tell you that we read it. I know Buck, Ratcliffe, Jordan Meadows. All of us have read this report who are out there talking about this. Collins has read it. We've had meetings about it. I'm just flabbergasted that he would assert that nobody has read this or few people have read this.
Well, you heard McCarthy. I mean, he's making the case that he's out to be a contrarian and that he's just looking for attention. What do you think his goal is here, Justin Amash?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it, but I have no idea what his motive is. But you know, his conclusions, I think, are very different from mine, and I disagree with him, and so I don't know why he's doing this.
All right, so moving to the week ahead, we know that former White House counsel Don McGahn was subpoenaed to testify. That date was set for May 21st. Well, that is on the schedule for him for this hearing before the House Judiciary Committee. We don't have much information past that, Congressman. Can you add anything to what we should expect tomorrow? Will he show?
Sandra, I don't believe he's going to show. The White House is exerting privilege right now. Also, what I would tell you, I think this is aspirational on the part of the Democrats. They continue to want to create this narrative that there was something impeachable. That they're basically running this like it's impeachment. That's really what they're trying to do, and I just don't think that you're going to see cooperation at this point.
Is this expected to be an open hearing? Do you know any other details about it?
No, I'm kind of like you. I saw it on my calendar. It's like, what? I didn't think he was coming in. So we've been trying to make sure that if he does come in, that I am prepared with the questions I want to ask Mr. McGahn. Actually, I have some ideas of what I want to ask him, but I think that privilege is going to be asserted, and he's not going to be there.
Well, he was featured prominently, obviously, in the obstruction portion of the Mueller report. So he's been subpoenaed, and they're also after all the documents pertaining to that, what he has said on the record. So do you know anything further about documents being provided? The White House has said no in the past. Any other information there?
Right. No. Right now, there's no documents being provided and none offered, and they're just sitting behind the privilege right now, and the Democrats, you know, what happened to them is when Mueller came out and said there was no conspiracy, then all of a sudden the obstruction of justice had to change its direction as well. So now they're basically on a fishing expedition trying to find stuff, and the White House is just saying we're not going to play that game.
Got it. So, but to the best of your knowledge, to finish up here, you do not think that Don McGahn plans to show up at that hearing?
That's right. The way I understand it, he's not going to be there.
All right. Congressman Andy Biggs, appreciate your time this morning, sir.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.
And did you catch this? The graduating class of Morehouse College celebrating more than just receiving those diplomas after a billionaire speaker offers to pay off their student loans for the entire class. How much this gift is expected to cost and what he wants in return.
We are enough to take care of our own community. We are enough to ensure we have all the opportunities of the American dream. Men of Morehouse, you are surrounded by a community of people who have helped you arrive at this sacred place and on this sacred day.
Well, that's technology billionaire Robert F. Smith addressing the graduating class of Morehouse College in Atlanta. He stunned his audience when he said he will pay off all their student loan debt. Jonathan Seri live in Atlanta with more. Jonathan.
Hey, John, I'm sure a lot of graduates are still pinching themselves. This tech billionaire's gift is expected to reach into the tens of millions of dollars, and it comes with a challenge to pay it forward. Listen.
Now, I've got the alumni over there, and this is a challenge to you, alumni. This is my class, 2019, and my family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans.
Yeah, you heard it right. Some students immediately burst into surprised looks and cheers, but for many, there was a delayed reaction to this offer. It seemed too good to be true. A lot of graduates say they weren't sure if they heard it right at first. Listen.
I checked my phone instantly. It was all over social media. I was like, oh, this is for real. So I was blessed, you know, it's a blessing.
Blessed indeed. Morehouse students graduate with an average student debt somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. And so for the average student, this gift is going to be huge. It'll give them a huge head start in life, John.
Wow, what a story. A lot of happy people there at Morehouse, for sure. Jonathan Seri in Atlanta, thank you. And we will have more on this coming up on America's Newsroom. We'll ask our headliner, former CFO Andy Puzder, about this generous gift Plus, former Education Secretary Dr. Bill Bennett will weigh in as well.
You know, I suppose if you're signed up right now and you've been asked to deliver a commencement address, the bar has been set pretty high.
Yeah, you're going to be asked to write some big checks, I suppose.
Well, that was a happy day for those grads.
Good for them.
We're changing laws as rapidly as we can get them through the courts. It'll go before Congress. It's going to have tremendous Republican support. I hope we can get enough Democrat support to get it passed.
The president pushing to overhaul our immigration system as the Department of Homeland Security changes course on plans to send migrants to Florida. What prompted the switch? Plus, there's this.
America's economy is not working for working people. So then, you know, supposed leaders, they walk around talking about, oh, the economy is great. The economy is great.
2020 hopeful Senator Kamala Harris downplaying the recent economic boom, just one of the contenders out slamming the president. Now the president's re-election campaign is firing back. Trump 2020 Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany joins us next.
All right, stocks opening lower on Wall Street this morning. As anticipated, overnight futures were down nearly 200 points. So first minute of trading here, you're looking at a 120-point loss on the Dow. There's still a lot of questions over China trade, what happens there. There's also this U.S. crackdown on Huawei, the Chinese telecom company. So all of that is leading to at least some weakness on the opening bell here as we kick off a new week. The Dow still firmly at 25,600. All right, we'll keep watching that for you.
I want to make sure that anybody that comes into our country comes in through merit. And what we want to do is put up a very strong border. We'll have, by the end of next year, 450 to 500 miles built. We're fighting the Democrats. The Democrats want open border. That means crime.
President Trump weighing in on his new immigration plan as acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan confirms migrant detainees will not be sent to Florida and to sanctuary cities, a claim once made by President Trump. Let's go to Griff Jenkins live in Washington. What is this clarification all about, Griff?
Good morning, John. Well, Acting Secretary McAleenan says that they're reversing course on a plan that would have shipped migrants to southern Florida or to northern locations like Buffalo, New York, after an official first told reporters on Friday that they were looking at less overwhelmed facilities across the country to deal with the massive influx at the border.
It wasn't going to be an effective use of resources. But yeah, we had to look at all options. When you have 16,000 people in custody and facilities designed for many fewer, you've got to look at any planning factor you can.
That news brought a sigh of relief to Florida officials like Governor Ron DeSantis, who seemed caught off guard by those initial reports, but it does little to address the overall situation, John. The Border Patrol's chief, Carla Provost, tweeting on Friday that they have surpassed 535,000 apprehensions this fiscal year so far, with no slowing down in sight. Now, as for previously reported migrant flights occurring a few weeks ago, officials in San Diego confirmed they are being flown from Texas to San Diego currently.
And some of the Democratic 2020 hopefuls are weighing in on the president's immigration plan, Griff?
They are indeed. On the Sunday show, Senator Amy Klobuchar blasted the president's new plan for that merit-based system for failing to even address what to do about the Dreamers and how to fix DACA. But her fellow competitor, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, drew the most notable attack, hammering his plan and suggesting as president she would not detain migrants in the first place.
And the truth is, President Trump's immigration policy is inhumane, ineffective, and wrong. As President of the United States, I wouldn't use the detention system at all.
This as Border Patrol officials say they have already been forced to release some 40,000 migrants into communities for, quote, the safety of those in custody and the agents. John?
Wow, what a statement from Senator Gillibrand. Griff Jenkins, thank you. Much more on the crisis at our southern border with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He joins us in the second hour of America's Newsroom.
President Trump's 2020 campaign responding to attacks from Democratic candidates as he is set to campaign in battleground Pennsylvania later today. This after Joe Biden's kickoff rally in Philadelphia this weekend, where the Democratic frontrunner slammed the president's policies.
I know President Trump likes to take credit for the economy and the economic growth and the low unemployment numbers, but just look at the facts, not the alternative facts. President Trump inherited an economy from Obama-Biden administration that was given to him, just like he inherited everything else in his life.
Bring in Kayleigh McEnany, press secretary for the Trump 2020 campaign. Kayleigh, good morning to you. I suppose that is fact that
good morning.
That President Trump did inherit Obama's economy, and he did precede his presidency. However, should Biden and the Obama administration be taking credit for the strength in our economy today, 3 years into President Trump's presidency?
No, President Trump reversed the disastrous Obama economy. Joe Biden likes to talk about alternative facts, but the one he's spewing are the alternative facts, are the lies. Conveniently, you did not hear Joe Biden just say that he and Obama orchestrated the worst economic recovery since World War II. And Joe Biden, you know, he's an empty suit who hasn't been asked a single hard question. And I'm wondering when he'll be asked that. I'm wondering when will he be asked about losing 200,000 manufacturing jobs. President Trump has gained 500,000. When will he be asked about the fact that wages were stagnant? Now they're growing at the fastest pace in a decade. What about his support for NAFTA, which hemorrhaged 1 million jobs, which President Trump ripped up and orchestrated the USMCA? President Trump has reversed every metric. I understand he wants to take claim for the Trump economy, but he can't do that factually speaking.
It'll be very interesting to see how that economic message comes about from the 2020 candidates as we continue to see strength in our U.S. economy. Kayleigh, and I want to run through a lot of big headlines that we saw from over the weekend. But ahead of all that, we've got the president campaigning in Pennsylvania tonight. He's going to be holding a rally there today. What will the president's message be?
That's right. You know, I'm about to head out to Montoursville, Pennsylvania right after this to join the president. And he's going to be able to look at the crowd of Pennsylvania. And instead of, you know, having false news, fake news like Joe Biden just did in that clip, he's going to be able to look at the people in the eye and say, your wages, your paychecks are growing twice as fast for low and middle income Americans. That is because of my presidency. Because of my presidency, manufacturing's revived. In Pennsylvania, it's such an important part of the economy. And we've seen nearly 500,000 of those jobs come back. President Trump has deliverables. Joe Biden has a failed record, as would Bernie Sanders, who wants to bring socialism to our country.
All right. What we heard from Mayor Pete last night in that town hall with Chris Wallace, he was talking about taxes and actually pitched 4 new tax hikes. Listen to this.
We really do need to entertain ideas like I would say a fairer, which means higher, marginal income tax rate on those earning the most, a reasonable wealth tax or something like that to make sure that people are giving back when they become enormously wealthy, perhaps a financial transactions tax that taxes these millisecond differences in computer trades that people become enormously wealthy off of.
A lot of those proposals by Buttigieg last night were met with applause, Kayleigh. How does the Trump campaign respond to what we just heard?
Yeah, there we go again with the tax and spend socialist in the Democrat 2020 field. You look at Obamacare alone, that had 18 taxes. Here we go again with 4 new taxes from Pete Buttigieg. We believe in giving the American people more of their money. As the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did, the average American saw $1,500 back in their paycheck, not to mention the bonuses and the added jobs. So if you like your money, vote for President Trump. If you want to give it to Pete Buttigieg and the socialists who want to do the Green New Deal, then by all means do that, because it's not going to be a good scenario for your paycheck and your bottom line.
Meanwhile, Buttigieg, who we heard a lot from last night, is surging to the top tier in the latest New Hampshire polling. This is Real Clear Politics average here, with Biden still the front runner at 28% in that state, Sanders at 15%, and Buttigieg now in double digits, Kayleigh, at 10.5%.
Yeah, he's making a surge because I think Democrats are unhappy with the choices they have before them. They look in each and every one of these. I mean, you mentioned Biden and Bernie, now Buttigieg. They're all a different iteration of the same mold, and that is socialism. I know Biden's trying desperately to distance himself from that label, but when you say you're the most progressive candidate in the race, that purportedly means more so than Bernie Sanders. And Buttigieg there embracing third-term abortion and high taxation. This is just another socialist.
And before we run out of time, on that note, I want to address that. Buttigieg last night said abortion is a national right. Bernie Sanders saying something very similar here on Meet the Press.
They have that constitutional right. So if you're asking me, would I ever appoint a Supreme Court justice who does not believe in defending Roe versus Wade, who does not believe that a woman has a right to control her own body. I will never do that.
What you just heard from Bernie Sanders is he's pledging to only nominate Supreme Court justices that will support Roe v. Wade. Final thoughts from you on that, Kaylee, before we let you go.
Yeah. Right, and Bernie Sanders said he doesn't know of any restrictions on abortion he'd put in place. This is a very sick place we're at in society when you have people saying we should be able to abort children up until the moment of birth. And not only that, 44 Senate Democrats voting against keeping an infant alive outside of the womb. This is not what this country stands for. Everyone's entitled to life. That includes the most vulnerable among us, and President Trump will fight for the children in this country.
Kaylee McEnany, great to get your response to all of that from the Trump campaign this morning. Appreciate your time.
Well, it's a repeat for Brooks Koepka.
It's a Koepka coronation.
The rising golf star winning his second straight PGA championship yesterday, beating Dustin Johnson by 2 strokes. Koepka led from round 1 till the end to take his 4th major championship, despite a hiccup or 2. He will defend his U.S. Open title at Pebble Beach in California next month.
So congratulations to him.
Yeah.
But, you know, heading into this, the final round on Sunday, there was a lot of talk about he turned his girlfriend away for a kiss as he approached the tee. So, you know, who knows? It's left up to debate whether or not that actually happened. But it looked like he wanted to focus on winning that tournament.
Yeah.
Well, it's a done deal.
A lot of money at stake.
Congratulations to him. Meanwhile, as the Attorney General investigates the investigators, one Democratic candidate says there is no need to look into the origins of the Mueller probe, why Republicans say it is essential to get to the bottom of this.
Was there information that was misleading leading to the FISA court? Was there actual lies? Was there abuses there that now are coming out? What I appreciate about the Attorney General not doing is jumping to conclusions. He said, we're going to investigate this. We're going to see what actually was out there because there's too many discrepancies in the stories.
Fox News alert now on an 8-year-old girl kidnapped in Texas. She's been found. Salem Sabatka was walking with her mother when she was forced into a car in Fort Worth Saturday. The search for her went on for around 8 hours before she and her alleged kidnapper were spotted at a hotel in Forest Hill. Michael Webb is now under arrest on a charge of aggravated kidnapping.
Aren't there legitimate reasons to investigate the investigators, Senator?
I don't think there are, and this really bothers me. They started the investigation because of legitimate news that there were people from the Trump campaign talking to others about Russia and exchanging information. We know that.
That's Senator and presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar saying there is no reason to investigate the origins of the Mueller probe, while a slew of prominent Republicans disagree, including Trey Gowdy, Doug Collins, Kevin McCarthy, and Mark Meadows. Let's bring in James Trusty, former Justice Department prosecutor and IFRA law partner. James, do you see it differently from the senator from Minnesota? Is there a reason to investigate the foundations of what became the Mueller report?
I think there really is, and it's kind of a shame it's breaking down on partisan lines, because really anybody, no matter what your political stripe, you should be looking at this and saying, well, wait a minute, there's some fair questions here. What was going on with the FISA court? Why, over a period of months, did they not tell the FISA court that there were real problems with the dossier? Why was Bruce Orr sitting down with Christopher Steele? And what communications were had that took place that let the FBI know just how suspect Steele and this dossier was? So I think there's some legitimate issues there. Nobody really wants to keep seeing probe upon probe upon probe. I get that. But we should all want consistency and fairness in the approach by the FBI and DOJ, and we're not sure we have it here.
Former Congressman Trey Gowdy, who has seen some of the intelligence behind the probe and the FISA court and so forth, says that calling it a dossier is really a bit of a stretch. Here are his remarks on Sunday Morning Futures.
We can call it a dossier. It sounds official. It's really something the National Enquirer would blush if they printed. So we know that it was used 4 times by the United States government. What we're trying to figure out is whether or not it was used a 5th time in the intelligence assessment. And you got Brennan, Clapper, and Comey, all 3 who know full well whether or not it was used in the intelligence assessment, but they're giving you different versions.
And the point is that it was paid for by the Democratic National Committee. So there should have been perhaps more attention paid to the source of this so-called dossier.
Right, John. So that's the key procedural point with the FISA court, which is at some point when you're going back to the court over and over again for months, you're supposed to disclose kind of the good and the bad. You tell them you're getting good intercepts, good information about the investigation, but you also tell them when you find out something's not really stacking up. And all the FBI ever did in that situation was say we speculate the dossier may have political motivations. It looks more and more like at some point various actors within the FBI in particular had a pretty firm idea that it was more than just speculation, that there was something seriously questionable about that dossier. So again, nonpartisan, that's just something we should want to know the answer to when we're talking about some of the most highly sensitive public corruption investigations in our country's history.
And the Attorney General, who is calling for an investigation of the origins of all this, told our Bill Hemmer that it is some of the highest level people in agencies like the FBI who he wants some answers from. Listen.
The thing that's interesting about this is that this was handled at a very senior level of these departments. It wasn't handled in the ordinary way that investigations or counterintelligence activities are conducted. It was sort of an ad hoc small group, and most of these people are no longer with the FBI or the CIA or the other agencies involved.
So it does sound like some of those former leaders, perhaps James Comey, perhaps Jim Brennan, are going to have to answer the Attorney General's questions.
It certainly sounds like that's the kind of thing that John Durham, as the appointed counsel to oversee all this stuff, is going to want to know, which is who's got fingerprints on it, what were their motivations, were they acting in a political space rather than a law enforcement space? And again, I just think that's a fair inquiry at this point. There's enough smoke where we should be looking to see if there's fire.
And again, you say that's a nonpartisan point of view.
It should be. I know I'm a pretty lonely voice in D.C. these days, but you know, it'd be nice to see some folks on either side of the aisle just say, look, you know, we've invested a lot in two major investigations that took place during our recent political span, and we should know whether there was something hanky about it. I mean, whether there was a consistent, professional, unbiased approach, or whether there were some things we should fix.
James Trusty, former Department of Justice prosecutor. Thank you, James.
Thanks, John.
Destruction across the heartland, 50 twisters touching down over the weekend, and the threat is far from over. The Midwest now bracing for another tornado outbreak.
Plus, federal officials issuing an ultimatum to one major city as it tries to block ICE agents from using local airports to deport illegal immigrants. We have a live report coming up.
You can hear the howling wind inside one of 50 tornadoes that touched down across the nation this weekend. Storm chaser Reed Timmer, working on behalf of AccuWeather, surviving that close encounter. But more bad weather could be on the way. Alicia Acuna is live in Denver with more on this and what to expect now, Alicia.
A lot worse this week expected, Sandra, and the pictures really tell the story here. We want to begin in Mineola, Kansas, where, as you can see, it was hit by a tornado this weekend that was so powerful it was able to flip over trucks and cause a lot of damage. This was part of a storm system that also caused severe winds, hail, and flooding. In Geronimo, Oklahoma, the fire department says there was no warning when a twister hit. The National Weather Service says preliminary reports indicate that it was an EF2, that's wind speeds of 111 to 135 miles per hour. Walden Simmons says he and his wife were home when the tornado hit out of nowhere.
Right in the middle of that window, standing up.
Forecasters say at least 4 tornadoes hit West Texas this weekend, including an EF2 in Abilene. The National Weather Service saying it is still assessing the damage caused by that storm. In Dallas, heavy rains brought flooding and power was knocked out for thousands of people on Saturday. And again, Sandra, more severe weather is expected today, including tornado outbreaks forecasted for Texas and western Oklahoma. The National Weather Service saying this is a very potent storm system. Sandra.
It's not over yet. Alicia Acuna, thank you.
New details just into America's newsroom about a rocket hitting near the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. What we're learning about the attack, where it came from, and what it could mean about tensions with Iran. Plus, the president doubling down on China, saying Beijing will not pass the U.S. economy on his watch. We break this down with our headliner, Andy Puzder, next.
They're getting killed with the tariffs. China's getting totally killed. They're hoping that in 16 months, Donald Trump will be defeated by any one of those Democrats, and they'll go back to making $500 billion a year. And I understand that. I mean, I could really, frankly understand, because it's not going to happen with me.